So Mom and Dad have moved to Reams. And what a great summer, the summer of 1970 for us kids. What a great reintroduction into California. Friends. Tom had Rocky and Filer and other friends. Philip had Rocky and Dick Morley, Rick Morley. Timmy, he was 9. He had a friend right across the street. I think his name was Jimmy. I had my cousins. I was at the beach all the time. I was at Balboa. Daddy bought some sort of a blue beater, and it was a convertible, and it was it was great. I was down in Newport Beach every day, all the time. Packy was working at the YMCA as a counselor, camp counselor, having a blast. And we would wait for him to come home every day so he can tell us stories and sing us the riddles that he learned because we had never heard him before. So everything came together. The Bensons, Scotty, Mary Lee, Richard, Jim. I mean, instant friends right there. It was a good summer. Big pool, Newport Beach, Back Bay, Costa Mesa. Irvine was just starting up. Right off of Jamboree. It's hop, skip, and a jump down to Balboa. It was a good summer. It was filled with fun and excitement and learning and growing. Some things not good, but it's a good summer. Except for Mom and Dad. May have been Daddy's worst summer, as a matter of fact. I thought Daddy was working. He got up every morning, he got dressed, he put his tie on, and he left by 8:30. I thought Daddy was working. He wasn't. I didn't know that. He was going out every day to Hughes, Macdac, Rockwell, all the places where he knew he could get in easily because he was highly qualified in procurement. Contracts. The man knew his stuff. He should have been just slide right in. But it was 1970 and everybody was laying off. Everybody was laying off. He could not find a job. But he still got up every morning and he got dressed and he went out and he came home around 2:30. It was quiet. And he sat in the corner in his chair, played his solitaire. He could play solitaire in his hands. It was a great game. And he'd work the races. And he'd get up the next morning and he'd go out and he'd get dressed. I thought he was going to work, but he wasn't. And it was weighing on him. So I'm home alone. I'm in the living room with Mr. Bones. There's nobody else in the room. Mom and Dad are in the kitchen, and they're talking kind of low, you know. Psst, 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 psst. Well, they're trying to be quiet because of me. You know, I'm 17 and I'm really struggling to hear this, but there wasn't an argument. It was a different tone, and I didn't know what it was. So I'm playing with Mr. Bones, and I hear pound, bang, bang, bang. And then I hear, that's not my family. What's going on? So I get up, and I go in the kitchen. I march in the kitchen, because they obviously need my 17-year-old wisdom. And I say, "Ooh, you said a bad word." And then I looked at the situation, and I wished I hadn't said anything. Daddy had tears running down his face, and his face was real red. And the pounding was him pounding on the counter, because he wanted to make a point with Mom, but I was there, and he wanted to be quiet at the same time. And Daddy turned around slowly, and he looked at me, and he said, "Yeah, I did. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." He said, "I can't find a job. I can't find a job." And he walked out, and Mom turned around and went back to making dinner. And I grew up that day. You know, you need these terrible situations to grow up. And at his expense, and Mom's expense with my big mouth, I grew up that day. So Daddy made a great, brave decision to stop looking for a job that would suit him and find a job that would get instant cash. Any job now. He was no longer going to do the Russ King thing. He was going to find any job. So his first job the next day was selling college courses. And he would get leads, and he would go out and he would bring his 3-ring binders of the courses, and he would go to these people and try and sell a course. It was a crappy job, a crappy job. But you know, Daddy, if you knew Daddy, any stranger who met Daddy had a new friend. As shy as he was, this college course was his excuse to get to know people. And he did, and he'd come home and tell us about it. And he'd get up the next morning and put his suit on, and he'd go look for a job at Rockwell and Hughes and MacDac and whatever else was out there. And he'd come home, and he'd get his college courses, and he would go back out on a lead or 2 or 3. He wasn't selling anything, but he was keeping his spirits up. And he'd come home, and he'd sit in the corner in that chair. And on one table, he'd have his races, and all of us got to help with his races. We'd color pink or yellow, and he'd go, well, you know, if you see the number 11, you know, put a yellow mark. Go through all these, very neat, organized. The pencils were always sharp. That's Daddy. Straight lines, soft, delicate. And then he'd pick up his college courses in these 3-ring binders, and he'd go through it so he could learn the applications and what the courses entail, so he could be a good salesman. He wasn't selling anything. No one was buying. A lot of leads, but no sales. So finally, Daddy had a lead one night, and he came home around 10, and he was really excited. Really excited. He said, I sold a college course. And we were just so elated. He was spirited, and he was happy, and it was just the best thing. He needed that really bad. It was a good shot in the arm. And I think the next day, that was like a Friday, and the next day, now this may be from another time, but it may be the next day, he took us out to dinner at Bob's, an early dinner, at Bob's Big Boy on 19th. And let's see if any of you remember this, because the only reason I remember this is because of this incident. So we get to Bob's, and Daddy loves bacon, and he said to the waitress, I would really like some crisp lettuce. Well, you know, it's so easy to humiliate Dad, and we were so good at it, weren't we? I was. You said crisp lettuce, and he just was so embarrassed. So he said to the waitress, I meant crisp bacon. And the waitress said, of course, I know what you meant. But it was good for a year to tease Daddy about crisp lettuce instead of crisp bacon. But anyway, so that was our weekend. He was excited. He took his family out to eat at Bob's. Monday, he got a call. He needed to go pick up the course that people were canceling. He never did make a sale. There was no money. 2 weeks invested and nothing. By the next day, he had another job. This job was, security guard. This job was cleaning buildings. That was the next job. So he spent about 2 weeks selling the courses, or not selling the courses. The next one, he went out and he became a manager with Court Greeley's cleaning service. Court really liked Daddy. He was a very handsome young man. And I think he liked Daddy because Daddy was like a father figure. He was intelligent. He wasn't a good old boy. He didn't curse. He didn't spit. He was just a great man. And Court liked him. Now, Court's boss, Mr. Keegan, didn't like Daddy. All of Daddy's life, he said, they're out to get me. They're out to get me. And of course, they weren't out. Nobody's out to get Daddy. But sometimes they were. Small men in big positions did not like having Daddy around. They just didn't like it. They wanted someone who had no education and was a schlep. And Daddy wasn't that. So Daddy had this job cleaning office buildings and medical buildings and medical offices and on, and we all helped him. This wasn't a job for Daddy. This wasn't for him. He couldn't do this. You're supposed to have like 6 minutes in an office building. We were taking 20, 25. You're supposed to go in, rake the carpet, empty the ashtray, empty the trash, and get out. No, not us. We're dusting. We're putting everything in a pile. We're feeding the fish. We're putting the letters in order. We're picking up all the staples. We're doing 25 minutes in each office. He needed us. He needed us. We didn't get paid. Our pay was in the milk in the refrigerator and the gas in the car. And Daddy appreciated the help, and he loved having his kids with him, but he didn't like us being out at night because it was a second shift job. We were out till 11, 12 at night that summer. And when we were working in the medical building, I kept getting stuck with needles. Yeah. I said, Daddy, I got stuck again. He said, all right, that's it. You're not doing medical anymore. You go clean the restrooms in the hall. But Daddy needed us. It was a good time. It was a good experience. He really needed us. Just on a side note, when things were winding down and Keegan really wanted Daddy out, Daddy and I cleaned an office building in Laguna. It was just Daddy and I that night. And it wasn't a tall office building, but it was very, very wide. And so Daddy took one side and I took the other. So I get in there and there's a man, this is 10, 11 at night, and there's a man working in there, a young man, and he's at a big draft board. And we're small talk, you know. I'm doing my job emptying the trash and he's talking to me and I'm talking back. And he says, do you want to see what I'm doing? And I said, yeah, sure. Yeah. What are you doing? So I go over there and he's showing me these drawings. And he said, well, this is going to be a new city and we're going to put the store in here and the market over here and we're building condominiums over here. And he's going on and on and on. And he was just fascinating and he was very proud of his work. And he said, you know what we're going to call it? And I said, no. And he said, Laguna Niguel. That was an interesting side story. That's pretty cool. I wonder if that ever took off, huh? So anyway, Daddy, this second shift wasn't going to fly for Daddy. It was too hard on him physically. He did not like having his kids working with him at all. So I think he had that job for a month, maybe a month. It just wasn't going to go. He did not like us with him. So he got another position, fast money, and that was a manager of a Jack in the Box. Was that the next one or the other one? No. The next one was security guard. Daddy quit the very lucrative cleaning business and became a Pinkerton security guard. Now, at this time, we're transitioning over to Rutgers. Daddy had a little Eisenhower jacket, and he had a canteen. It was where he would clock in. He would strap it around his chest, and it was like a canteen. It was about this big, and that was he'd punch into the wall where there was a time clock installed, and that was his job. And it was third shift. But he liked the job. He liked working for Pinkerton. He liked the Pinkerton name, and he got to go different places and work in different areas. So one night, and I would always visit Daddy if I could, or bring him some food, or I'd find out where he was, and I'd take someone with me and we'd go see him. But mostly it was just me and Dad. I was pretty close to Dad. So one night, Daddy was working at Fashion Square in Santa Ana. And it was about 11 o'clock at night. And the mall pretty much closed up early, 8:30, 9. So it was just Daddy and maybe some lovers walking around or something. So I get there, and Fashion Square was a precious little mall. It was just an outside thing with small stores and these pretty trees that had Christmas lights, those white lights. Well, they weren't Christmas, but ambiance lights. And it was about 11. So I go, hi, Daddy. And he goes, oh, hi, sweetheart.